Peace and good things to all. May the peace of the Lord shine upon you. Stop for a moment. Can you see this wonderful panorama? Together, let us listen to the sounds, the music of nature. It's marvelous. Maybe you've never really listened to such a wonderful melody before. This is my homeland, the place where I was born and lived. Up here they ask me why so many people every day set out to visit the places that are so dear to me. Here I lived, I preached, I suffered, I rejoiced and prayed with the first friends I made. Here today, people are still living, preaching, suffering, rejoicing, and above all, praying. There it is, down there, my town. Assisi. My Assisi. Would you like to know who I am? My name is Francis. Francis of Assisi. And yours? Assisi. I'll never tire of looking at it or contemplating these stones that have stood the test of time and have spread a message of peace throughout the whole world. This is the secret that Assisi holds, the hope that lights my way. Come with me to my town, become a worker for peace, because the world today desperately needs harbingers of peace. My life as a Christian began here at San Rufino Cathedral, because not long after I was born, my parents brought me here to be baptized. This was the church of my youth, and later I began to preach here. How wonderful it was when some of the canons decided to follow me and share the choices I had made. What immense joy I felt the day when Brother Silvestro asked me if he could enter the order. He was the first priest to do so.
The facade of St. Rufino Cathedral at Assisi is particularly valuable. Built in travertine and Subasio stone, it is subdivided into 3 areas. Rufino is the martyr venerated as the first bishop of the town of Assisi.
With the passing of time, Assisi has certainly changed. History has left its mark here too. Good and bad times, times of war bringing darkness and misery. Talking of war, I'd like to take you up to see the fortress.
Today, all we can see are the remains of the fortress, which was rebuilt in the 14th century on the ruins of a previous fortress dismantled by the inhabitants of Assisi in 1198.
I was there too. I was 16 and full of dreams for my future, like all young people. I dreamt of glory and riches, which my family could easily guarantee, seeing as my father was particularly well off. I dreamt of possessing the most beautiful armor, an adventurous life as a knight fighting in the Crusades. I wanted to become a strong and invincible soldier just like this fortress, but as you well know, things did not turn out quite as I had planned.
The ruins of this beautiful example of military architecture recall the rivalry that existed between the Pope and the Emperor, and Assisi and Perugia. From here, the view of Assisi and the surrounding area is absolutely breathtaking.
My life was already planned for me, as with any child who comes from a wealthy family. But my destiny lay in an encounter with a leper. I remember that day all too well. I was riding my horse when I met him. I'd always been repulsed by the sight of a leper, but this time it was different. I jumped down from my horse and ran to kiss him. Yes, kiss him. What was happening to me? My soul-searching and questions led me to St. Damiano, a small, secluded church surrounded by nature. I'd never been in there before. Why waste my time? It was so miserable and uncared for, and yet my whole future awaited me inside this little church.
The sanctuary of St. Damiano lies just outside the city walls of Assisi. It is one of the most authentic Franciscan sites. This small church was built in honor of a doctor, St. Damiano, between the 8th and 9th century in a rustic pre-Romanesque style. It was constructed near to a hospice which probably housed pilgrims on their way to Rome. Today it stands exactly as Francis restored it.
Look closely at this crucifix. It was the first thing that I noticed when I entered the church. His eyes, his face, deeply touched my heart. They spoke to me. I began to pray, like I had never prayed before, and I heard his voice speaking to me. Please don't think I'm mad. I can assure you that I heard him. He spoke to me saying, "Francis, can't you see that my house is crumbling? Restore it for me." My heart replied without hesitation, "Of course I will do it willingly, my lord."
The crucifix of St. Damiano, one of the most famous and venerated icons in the world, was painted in the 12th century by an unknown Umbrian artist. It is predominantly Romanesque in style, with a distinct Middle Eastern Syrian influence. The crucifix is 2 meters 10 centimeters long and 1 meter 30 centimeters wide. It was painted firstly on coarse material and then glued onto a piece of walnut wood. At present, it is cared for by the Clare sisters in the Basilica of St. Clare.
I looked around the church, and I saw for myself how it needed restoring. It was virtually collapsing. I left immediately to collect some money to give to the poor parish priest who was responsible for the church, but he wouldn't listen to me. He thought I was quite mad. So did my father, who came looking for me here. But my path lay out clearly before me. screams and threats were not going to change my mind. They just couldn't understand. If it was pure folly, then it was the folly of the gospel. That's how I began, restoring this church, even though Jesus, when he talked to me, referred to the restoration of the church as a whole, not just this little church. I hoped to establish a convent for women who would dedicate their entire life to prayer. I had made up my mind. It would be Clare's new home. Clare was like a beautiful light for me and my fellow brothers. She shared our beliefs, our ideals, our hopes, and our suffering.
Six years later, Francis's prophetic decision became reality. In 1212, St. Clare, following Francis's example, decided to dedicate her life entirely to Jesus Christ. Together with a group of friends, more or less the same age as her, she founded the Order of the Poor Sisters. We can still see today how they lived a cloistered, poor and very simple life.
The last time I stayed at St. Damiano was 1225. For years I had suffered with excruciating pain in my eyes, which gave me no rest. But during the night, the Lord spoke to me. It was a terrible night. The pain was excruciating. The mice would not let me sleep. And yet I still managed to comprehend the purpose of my suffering. It was at that moment that I was inspired to write the hymn of creation. I so wanted to praise and thank the Lord for Brother Sun, Sister Moon and stars, for Brother Wind and Sister Water, for Brother Fire, and the whole earth who is mother to us all. Do you know something? Suffering can bring you closer to God and His creation. All you have to do is trust Him. It's simple.
Clare's religious family still follows its path of prayer and cloistered life in the Basilica of St. Clare. An apparently closed life, but one that opens up to the entire world with a special type of spirituality that still generates interest today. The Basilica is Umbrian Gothic in style. It has white and pink stripes on the outside, which have been constructed using white stone and pink stone from Mount Subasio. Two rose windows stand out of the polychromatic facade. They are decorated with lace stone work and 96 small columns. Inside, St. Clare, St. Agnes, the Beatified Beatrice, and their mother, the Beatified Ortolana, are all buried. They were all sisters at Saint Damiano.
One of the most significant moments of my life took place in this very square. I wanted to give a public demonstration in front of my bishop and fellow citizens, a clear sign that showed how deeply I had changed. I officially and publicly gave back all my wealth and even the clothes I was wearing to my father. I said, "From now on I can truly say, 'Our Father who art in heaven.' No longer will I say, 'My father Peter of Bernardone.'" My father was desperate. He tried everything to convince me to change my mind, with gentle persuasion and not so gentle persuasion. But I left him. After all, it was inevitable. I left all my riches behind. They are superfluous for a life of poverty. Lepers awaited me. Washing their bodies and curing their sores finally made me feel truly rich. I had made my choice. I was alone. I had no traveling companions. This is how my long and arduous journey began. My new life had begun. I remember only too well the day I went to see Bernardo da Quintavalle. He had offered me supper. He wanted to talk to me. I could never have imagined what was about to happen. He wanted to follow me and leave everything behind. He was convinced. I can still remember the long conversation we had, his worries, his questions, and his doubts which he wanted to share. That night I went to his place. I was no longer alone. Time passed. New companions continued to arrive, eager friends who put their lives on the line so that they could truly live the gospel. We left for Rome. "Let's go to see the Pope. He will understand us and bless us." We returned and set up our first home at the Rivotorto. It was so ramshackle and small that we had difficulty in actually lying down. Often we had no bread, and we lived on alms.
We do not know the exact location where the Franciscan order began. The sanctuary that can be visited today was built in the 19th century. The rustic hovel built in rough stone is a reconstruction which gives the pilgrim an idea of how the first brothers lived together with Francis.
One night at Rivotorto, I remember the cry of a brother, "I'm dying! I'm dying!" We awoke, alarmed by his cry. I lit the lantern so that I could see who was crying out and why. A brother told me that he felt as if he were dying of hunger. I felt responsible for his anguish and pain brought on by hardship and fasting. I didn't hesitate. We prepared the table together and collected together the few provisions we had, and we all ate. This is sharing, brotherhood, and loving one another. We always shared our problems so that we could resolve them. The Lord prefers mercy to sacrifice.
Just above Assisi, you can visit the prison monastery. Francis and his first followers often came here to meditate and pray. It is completely surrounded by nature.
Look closely at the nature that surrounds you. Listen to its voice and converse with creation. I remember the time I saved a nest of turtle doves that were about to come to an untimely end. I prepared a nest for them, and we adopted them. They were always near us. They listened to me just like hens. Then one day, after a blessing and quick greeting, they left. Our sister turtle doves. Remember, look, listen, and talk with the creatures around you.
A small convent grew around the cave of the saint. Near to the 14th century church that faces a small hanging cloister, a small oratory was built dedicated to Saint Mary. The name prison derived from the rather inconvenient site of this refuge, where Francis and his companions lived segregated from the world, living a particularly austere life.
Seek refuge here, and you will feel free. It's not like being in prison at all. You realize what true freedom means. Freedom to love those by your side. Freedom to truly appreciate the nature which surrounds you. Freedom to desire only that which is truly essential. Freedom to live. Yes, to live an authentic peace that you desire so much. Take heart. Search for your own prison so that you can find freedom.
Assisi is a town best explored on foot, weaving along its labyrinth of small streets. It feels as if you had really gone back in time. It's so easy to recall what everyday life was like in medieval Assisi. Each step reminds you of Saint Francis. It's still possible today to soak up the atmosphere of the 1200s by exploring the narrow and hidden streets. You can discover places that really take you back in time. Walls that are exactly as they were, untouched and unchanged. The sort of details that guarantee an unforgettable journey, full of surprises that nourish a very special kind of meditation. Every visitor should explore and search. Many of these streets meet together in the large municipal square. The buildings that surround the square are all beautiful and very old. The architecture of the square is virtually as Francis himself would have seen it. The council tower and the temple of Minerva stands out with its 6 large Corinthian columns. It was transformed into a Catholic church in 1539. At midday, the square is full of pigeons, but during the evening, groups of young people meet here to sing and enjoy each other's company. During the first few days of May, the Calendimaggio Spring Festival takes place in this square. The medieval character of Assisi is held within its walls, its buildings, its narrow streets, and its monuments. The Calendimaggio Festival offers a unique yearly opportunity to go back 7 centuries. The crossbow competition is one of the most spectacular events of the festival. The crossbows are precision-built and handcrafted in wood, real jewels of wooden sculpture. Ancient music creates the right atmosphere, evoking the emotions of a real journey through time. The traditional flag throwers can also be seen juggling their flags among the public, a spectacular display.
I have many fond memories of my youth and the Calendimaggio. When I was young, I was an active participant. Dances, beautiful clothes, laughter and fun. That was what my life consisted of. One year, I was even nominated as Lord of one of the brigades. I deny nothing. I was rich, young, and my whole life was in front of me. What a life. I lived in full awareness of the choices I made, in my moments of joy and pain, and I thank God for calling me.
The Calendimaggio represented in the past and is still today an integral part of the city's life. During the first days of May, it renews a challenge between the noble upper and the noble lower, led by their respective leaders. The distinction between the two parts goes back to the 14th century, when Assisi was at its height. The two most important families were the Nepes and the Fiumi, who fought for the leadership of the city. Among them were also the Guelfi and Ghibellini, who incited cruel and bloody battles that caused many deaths and ruined numerous families. The noble upper was led by the Nepes, whereas the noble lower was led by the Fiumi family. This division and the continuing battles between the two sides marked the beginning of a decline for the city of Assisi. This contest continues today, with both sides challenging each other with music, songs, minstrel serenades, medieval costume shows, poems, flag and crossbow competitions, and numerous sideshows. The city relives its dream of love in the beauty of its medieval streets, fountains, arches, buildings and fortresses. The crowd gathers on the steps of the square. A new flag-throwing display is about to begin. Meanwhile, the inhabitants of Assisi, dressed in their costumes, prepare themselves for another show. jumping with the flag becomes increasingly difficult. It's not an easy task at all. Well done, you did it! The ladies, knights and archers, dressed in their finery, recall Assisi's glorious past. The costume shows are still impressive today. The families of Assisi compete with each other, trying to catch the spectators' attention with their spectacular and beautiful costumes. This is how the inhabitants of Assisi welcome the spring, cheering the new May Queen, a symbol of the eternal joy of living.
L'ha fat per tot mandar, non si age scuola mar, più se l'anima che l'arte. Qui non vengan danzare, a danzare.
Assisi is not only music, dance and song. This city offers differing emotions, festive and welcoming corners and locations. That's how it's always been. There's a place where you'll undoubtedly find the peace and welcome you're looking for. St. Stephen's Church. I stopped here a few times with my friends. I remember when it was very cold and we were collecting alms in the streets of Assisi. We came here to seek refuge, rest, and talk with God. We were tired, but what peace and serenity we found among these walls that have remained unchanged. I'm still there, waiting to talk and listen.
You can reach St. Stephen's Church by taking Via San Paolo, which leads off Piazza del Comune. It is one of the oldest sacred sites of Assisi and has never been changed, modified or retouched since the 12th century. The church has a single nave and a semicircular apse. The church's decoration is minimalistic and essential. The only decoration is the fresco of the Madonna of the Saints, and that which remains of the crucifix.
There used to be a wood, a footpath, and a half-ruined chapel down there. Assisi was quite near. I could see it whenever I wanted to. This area was known as the Porziuncola. The little church there was to become the very heart of our adventurers' brothers living together, brothers trying to live the gospel. It was in this small church that I asked for explanation of a passage of the gospel that is absolutely fundamental for me. I decided that I should not possess gold or silver, money, shoes or clothes. I had to announce Christ and his gospel, with Sister Poverty as my companion. I gathered my brothers together here. There were already thousands. They arrived on foot from all over the country. This is a place of forgiveness. Praise and thank God for those who forgive in the name of your love. I lived here for a long time. I hope you'll feel at home as well when you come to visit my house.
At the foot of the hill at Assisi, the Basilica of Saint Mary of the Angels rises up majestically. This imposing Renaissance temple was built not only to house the little Benedictine church restored by Francis, known as the Porziuncola, but also to welcome the numerous pilgrims that come here from all over the world. It was here that Francis finally understood his true vocation and took his decision to live in total poverty. It was also here that he founded the Order of the Friars Minor. On the anniversary of the consecration of the Porziuncola in 1216, Francis received an official pardon, the famous Pardon of Assisi, from Pope Honorio III. Francis passed the last days of his life here. He was tired and worn out by a life of deprivation in which he had dedicated himself totally to the needs of others. He suffered tremendously with the pain in his eyes, and he was virtually blind.
Take heart, brother doctor. Tell me that death is near. For me, it is the door to life.
On the 3rd of October 1226, Francis of Assisi died serenely among his fellow brothers. At St. Mary of the Angels, a huge throng of people gathered. They had come from all over. Even at the time, Francis was loved and followed like no other person.
May the Lord be praised for our sister death.
Francis was proclaimed saint in 1228, 2 years after his death. Pope Gregory IX wanted to underline the importance and greatness of the poor man of Assisi, so he ordered Tommaso of Celano to write a biography of Francis. At the same time, he proclaimed that an important basilica should be built to honor Saint Francis of Assisi. He placed the first foundation stone the day after the canonization ceremony. The entire complex was designed and built by Friar Elia. It is an imposing construction that consists of 2 churches, one on top of the other, near to the convent. The lower and the upper basilica.
Walk with me through these timeless treasures. Shed your cares, far from the stress of everyday life. When you return, if you wish, I will come with you. Have faith. Trust in God. I always have. And live in joy, sowing the seeds of peace, with the joy of humility and the poverty of the just.
The lower basilica is developed following a tau shape, which recalls the cross, the real signature of Francis himself. It is made up of an enormous low crypt. The atmosphere here is full of spirituality and prayer. The lines of this magnificent structure are designed to converge in an expression of glory, represented in the splendid canvases above the altar that celebrate Francis as poor, obedient, and chaste. In the right arm of the transept, we find a representation by Cimabue of the Madonna on the throne, with Saint Francis at her side. Apparently, this painting is the most faithful interpretation of Saint Francis. In the left arm, you can admire the splendid crucifixion of Lorenzetti. Even lower down, following 2 flights of stairs, we find ourselves in front of St. Francis's tomb. It is a place that provokes a deep emotion, because it is so simple and temperate in style. It represents, so clearly, the meeting with Sister Death. The upper basilica is bold, festive, and rich with light. It has a completely different feel to the lower basilica. It is built around the shape of a Latin cross and has only one nave. It is famous for its pictorial art. Many priceless examples of artwork are collected together here, by artists such as Cimabue, Pietro Cavallini, Jacopo Turriti, and in particular Giotto, with his celebrated cycle of work depicting the life of Saint Francis.
These walls tell the story of my life. A journey lived from day to day, a story that continues with faith. Many people follow my footsteps, and within me there are still many questions.
Giotto exquisitely encapsulated the most significant moments of Francis's life. He depicts Francis holding the church, which is crumbling up on his shoulders. We see him in front of the Pope with his companions, delivering his rules. An important moment, an official duty of sharing of that which the Church represents, without reserve. the moment in which Francis received the stigmata, the completion of a life lived within the light of the gospel, a man who gave himself totally, and as a consequence, he received a gift. Francis with the Sultan, a far-reaching gesture, an important witness for us as we learn more about other cultures and religions, a moment in which Assisi became the city of peace and dialogue. Francis and the birds. His extraordinary relationship with nature is an example for all of us. It is an invitation to respect and preserve everything that is part of God's creation.
This is all I have to say to you. I, Brother Francis, want to follow the life and example of poverty that our Lord Jesus Christ set for us, and follow his Holy Mother. Goodbye, my brothers. Live in peace. Assisi is waiting to welcome you as it welcomed me and my story. My Assisi. Well, I'd like it to become your Assisi too.